Hey, what's up, guys? This is Drew. Welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. And I've got Luke Depron on with me. Super pumped to have Luke on. So, Luke has been in the exercise space and nutrition space for the past 12 or so years, really helping dads and entrepreneurs, one, lose weight, but two, really set up their life in a way that's going to support them. And so, Luke, I am super excited to have you today. What did we talk about?
I mean, we talked surfing. We talked about, how great it is to have kids when you spend 3 hours getting them ready to have them, crap in the bath and start the whole process over. And why everybody should have like what 7, 8 of them because it's
Or
it's the
30?
best time management tool that you can have. No, man, it's fun to get to dive in health nutrition. Obviously, we touched on importance of sleep, how to actually set minimum standards, and how you guys who have truly challenging lifestyles can still make progress in your health, your fitness, your physique, and being a time strapped dad, it's still possible to move the needle in a positive way.
Yeah, and one of the big things takeaway for me was this concept of minimum standards. So, I'm a kind of guy. There's probably a lot of guys listening that are like, "No, I'm all in, right? I want to work out 7 days a week, right?" And then all of
Yep,
a sudden, you crash and burn. So
yep.
I love the concept of minimum standards for a lot of areas of life, and we'll dive into that. So, guys, you're going to find a ton of value from this episode. And Luke, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your all your input here and expertise. And so, guys, super excited. Let's hop into the episode. Are you ready to become the dad you know you are meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect action is better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of 3, and founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode. Luke, what is going on?
Man, pumped to be here, dude.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. What are you sipping there?
This is a mushroom hot chocolate because I'm recently off caffeine. So,
Mushroom hot chocolate. Does it taste good?
yeah, it does. So they do have like a coffee version of this, but again, I am on a bit of a coffee detox right now. So
What
yeah,
do- what
it's
is what do mushrooms do for you, like effect wise?
I mean, I don't even honestly. I'm drinking this as the habitual like give
Yeah, I just
me
need
a
something in a coffee cup.
something warm like in the morning ritual. I don't know about all the hype in mushrooms. I'm not sure if it's all what it says out to be because I just can't imagine there's enough in there. Um, so I'm not going to speak on the. I'm not drinking this from any like hyper benefits. Truthfully,
Yeah, I've never done the mushroom stuff. I've done who is it? Dave Asprey, bulletproof coffee stuff. Put the little butter in there, mix it up.
butter
I've
in your
done
own.
that, MCT oil, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
How did that treat you? I'm kind of on the other side of. I'm not a huge fan of it for most
yeah, I
things.
don't know. It's I don't know if I could like tell any difference in like the way I felt or anything. It's just kind of weird. You're mixing up coffee in the morning. You're putting literally like a scoop of like ghee in there, or like
Yeah.
like pure butter, and mix it up. You have to like put it in a blender, and it's kind of nice that you take that first sip and it's just like oil like all over you. So goes down
I
smooth.
mean, like
But
you hear people talk, oh, you get so much energy, and it's like, well, yeah, you got like a 400 calorie hit coffee, and it's like
yeah,
have 3 eggs and a piece of toast, and you're gonna probably have some energy too.
yeah,
So I feel like the majority of people are raging on it from a energy standpoint, but you're just talking a big calorie hit in a liquid
yeah.
form that to me doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess too, it depends on what is your source of energy. I'm sure we'll dive into a lot of this like tactical
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's carbs, whether it's fat, whether it's what your macros look like, things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, so you were a coffee drinker. How much coffee are you drinking every day?
So I got to a point where there was a period where I was probably doing like 3 espressos. So I used to have like an espresso maker, or I do like a double of them. So I'm like, that's like 6 shots of espresso, and so I don't. There's nothing wrong with coffee. There's actually some really positive benefits, I think, to caffeine. Obviously, there's a reason we all, people want to drink it in the morning. But for myself, as somebody who tends to have an addictive personality, if something's good, I like, oh, give me more. I definitely would feel the negative effects of like heightened anxiety. and I don't like the idea that there's something that I need to do. So like I had this, little coffee, this little substitute today, but there's many days I don't. So I really don't like the idea of something having a hold of me that I need to do every day. So it was more
Yeah.
of that was probably the biggest driver of why I was cutting coffee.
Okay. I resonate a lot with that. I have the same type of personality, like extremely addictive. I don't know if that's like, something natural from birth or like you develop it over time or, certain personalities have it, but yeah, same thing. Like I drink way too much caffeine right now, for sure, but we just had a newborn. So
Bad
like,
life. Bad
uh,
life.
yeah.
Yeah, you get a pass.
But even before that, like I remember going on Amazon and just getting like a bulk thing of just like caffeine, like
Oh, really?
supplement. Yeah. And just be like, all right, let me get a little scoop here, and then they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, 50 people died from doing that. You should probably stop.
I
Uh,
just read an article not a few weeks ago of a kid who thought he was taking, I forget, milligrams, and he took grams, and yeah, he
yeah.
died.
Yeah. It can be extremely dangerous. Don't recommend it.
Yeah. Well, and you're wearing the Black Rifle Coffee Company, so yeah, you're living it, dude.
but, well, cool, Luke. Well, definitely appreciate you coming on, man. Like, let's dive in for folks that don't know you. Give them a little bit of an intro about, kind of where you came from, what you're up to now, how you're helping to drive results for you guys.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, my name's Luke Depron. Originally from Illinois. I live in San Diego right now. I've been in the health and fitness space for, I guess, over 12 years now, which is crazy. Done everything in the past from corrective exercise to personal training, sport performance. Got to work with, Olympic level like race walkers to martial artists. You name it, I've probably done it in the fitness space. And now for the last, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, I've done online fitness coaching. I primarily work with entrepreneurial businessmen, um, which is probably very relevant and similar to the dad life as far as time strapped, getting pulled in a million directions. And the majority of people now I work with are kind of trying to reclaim lost physique, lost energy, and kind of right the ship and get back on the path of like health and wellness.
Okay, gotcha. Well, this is gonna be a great conversation then. Because I'm definitely at that point right now. I think I saw from your bio, and then I kind of just dropped a little hint. I was like, yeah, we definitely need to chat because you help busy dad entrepreneurs lose 25 pounds, and I'm like, this is Luke's my man right here.
Yeah,
So,
man, it can be done.
so Luke, man, how's San Diego going? You like it a little bit better in Illinois?
Yeah, obviously, I take it for granted how beautiful it is here. I got an orange tree right outside right now. I can go grab an orange off of, and then I call home, and it's like, oh, it was beautiful the other day. It was 72, and then it's swinging back down to 40. And if for anybody who's in the Midwest or has lived there, like I know you're in Georgia, I don't know how far south, but I assume Georgia's quite nice as well. The Midwest is brutal. I mean, like there
Mm,
are harsh winters. Where there's people that deal with legit seasonal depression. Food sourcing is much more challenging, and I have a couple clients who are in the Midwest, and it's like, yeah, you're gonna have more limited options versus out here in San Diego, where there's a Whole Foods everywhere and there's fresh produce and you have more options. So, yeah, and then there's the fact that we have the ocean. So,
do you feel like growing up in the Midwest was like a benefit to you as a kid? And like I've heard that from a lot of people. They're like, you're like, yeah, it was tough as shit and it was cold, but like it built character for me. And then like I move
you
out to San Diego, there's a bunch of softies out here.
Well, and I'm one of them now, man. I've been out here long enough where it's like, we live in a bandwidth of if it gets below 68, people are complaining that it's cold. And then if it's above 76, it's like, it's hot. And now I'm becoming one of them. And I remember when I first moved out here, it was so strange to me because I would walk around in a t-shirt and shorts and I'm seeing people in like hoodies and like it would even
You're
if it
like,
just
dude, it's
drizzled.
65 degrees.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Like, if it even drizzled, it's like girls are out in like knee-high galoshes, like styled, and guys are wearing like North Face jackets, and it's like, what are you guys doing? It's like this is great weather. But I will say this one thing about growing up in the Midwest that I really do appreciate, and this isn't to rag on everybody here in Southern California because there's tons of transplants anyway. But man, Midwest people are like salt of the earth, good-hearted people, and that was something I immediately noticed there was a difference when I moved to a bigger city. Uh,
Yeah.
that there was a shift. So I really
Yeah.
do, thank you, please, opening, holding doors, stuff that I'm sure down in Georgia is very common. I do miss those qualities in
Yeah.
Midwesterners that
Did you
it lacks a little bit out here.
you take it up surfing at all?
I got into surfing. So I took up surfing for about 4 months when I moved out here, then I found jujitsu, and I never touched a surfboard really again. So I
Okay.
love to go to the beach. The ocean's a great, man, to go in and get a mental shift. So like to go down to the beach, jump in, body surf for 20, 30 minutes. I don't even bring a chair. I just put my keys on my sandals, dive in, get my headspace changed, and leave. I do regret kind of not sticking with surfing, but I would say surfing is almost more skill than sport. I would equate it to like the guitar, to
Mhm.
where it's going to take a period of time to get good, to where you're like it's really fun. I mean, I was able to get up in swells the very first day I went out with a pro guy who was able to help me like physically. At one point, he's pushing me up
Yeah.
in a swell, and it is quite a incredible sensation to be standing on a board on a wave. And I can't imagine what that next feeling is when you're actually like going horizontal down a wave. But the cost to get there is absolutely a lot of consistency. Again, I
Yeah.
would equate it probably to the guitar, right? Like strumming the guitar versus really being able to like rip on a
Yeah. Like you're
guitar
gonna suck for a
takes.
long time.
Yeah, and again, that's jujitsu, I suppose, for a while. But yeah, I found jujitsu, and that became my thing instead of
Yeah.
surfing.
That's awesome,
Which
man. Yeah.
as
I
as I've
always
gotten
wanted
older,
I
I kind
always
of regret.
wanted just like to be a surfer. I remember being an undergrad. I have like surfers as like my screensaver, and be like,
Okay.
yeah, man, like that's gonna be me. I'm gonna be a beach bum one day, and like it hasn't happened yet. Who knows? Maybe it
Well,
will. But I've tried surfing a few times out in North Carolina, like Wilmington Beach, and they get some like pretty decent swells on the East Coast. And yeah, I think I was able to stand up one time, and like
yeah.
that's my claim to fame. Like, yeah, I'm a surfer now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, it's an incredible sensation, and there's a reason. Like you see, well, I mean, they talk flow states. If you read any of Stephen Kotler's work, who's big on flow states, I think his original, I don't know whether it's thesis or his introduction to flow states was actually through, I think, big wave surfers.
Really?
And there is something to be said about, again, even in my little 4 month experience of, man, when you get up and like just the feeling of that, and I'm just going straight towards the beach, and just maybe I'd lean forward and felt the board shift 3 degrees, and how euphoric that was. And it's telling, because if you were to go drive up to 5 in the morning, it's like the ocean is just littered with black specks at 5 in the morning in
Mhm.
winter, because guys are getting up to get out there, and like that
Yeah.
tells you something.
What do you think
So
is about it like drives that kind of behavior? Like, I mean, in the flow state, especially, like, is it just the intense focus that people have to have, and like
I
that's part of the draw? Is like
I think
I literally can think about nothing but this, while I'm out there.
I do think there's that. I think there's a few things. I think there is that. There is the intense focus, but then I would question that on, again, if you're like a really high level surfer, how much focus, like, or is it just muscle memory for them at that
Yeah.
point? I think there's a massive, and this is the part that I do regret not sticking with surfing. I think there's a massive piece of actually just being out in nature.
Hmm.
And again, which is why I'm going to just go do just like my little day where I just go body surf,
Yeah.
and that's worthwhile. So I think there's a big connected to nature piece that is, something maybe we don't quite understand. And then I think there's an interesting, like, I think there's an inner ear, the floating crystal piece that may have something to do with this, where that like physical sensation, it's creating something in your body, and again, I think there could be something in the crystal that helps with your balance and your proprioception, that is a very unique experience that you're feeling. So I think there's something there too.
Yeah. That like, I don't know, man. It was amazing when I was out there doing it. And speaking on the nature part too, like I, I have small children now, so I don't get to do it as much as I used to. But I used to fly fish a lot, and same type of thing. Just
Oh
something
yeah,
like really peaceful about like one, the intense focus of like, hey, I have to like, it's a little bit different from regular fishing, just like cast it and reeling it back. Like
sure.
there's a million things you have to do with fly fishing, like as far as the delivery, the approach, what exact fly you're
Hmm.
using, and kind of like how that fly is floating down the river, like has to be like
Yep.
very specific, right? It's like that
Okay.
intense focus, but then also just like being out in nature, there's just like some connection there.
Yeah, I look at it as like, I've had days, because again, when I was attempting to learn to surf, I didn't know anything about anything. So I went, there's days I went out where I'm like, oh, this is a terrible day to be out. There's no waves, but I didn't think to check Surfline, surfline.com, where you can read the wave charts. And so I'm out there, and it's like, me and four other people, and there's no waves. And it's like, it was still a great day.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
imagine, you out fly fishing, like if you don't catch anything,
Oh
it's
yeah, it's
like
still awesome. Yeah.
still an awesome day. And so that to me speaks volumes that there is a nature component to that.
Yeah. Well, Luke, so tell me about some of the guys you work with now. Been like in the physical fitness space for a while, but like what specifically are you working on with guys, and like who's your ideal client, and what results are you helping to get them?
So the majority of guys do come to me because they are trying to solve a weight loss goal.
Okay. Mm,
That tends to be like the biggest reason to step in.
yeah.
Right? Like there's like the physical, like, okay, I'm recognizing, but it's also again with a lot of the entrepreneurial crowd that I work with, it's like recognizing they're not performing at like peak potential. And
Hmm.
again, the physical weight tends to be a physical manifestation of that, but it's also low energy. Like not dealing with stress well, because the physical body is going to impact pretty much everything we do. So again, as a dad, like if you're stressed with your kids, but you're out of shape and you don't have a way of blowing off steam, like obviously the physical side is going to be a piece of that. So yeah, most people do come through with the weight loss goal, but I always tell them like what excites me is like I don't care if somebody loses 20 pounds. It's really fun listening to a guy try to describe feeling really good.
Yeah.
And when you get a regimented exercise routine going, when you get your nutrition dialed in, which all of these things are going to be required, when you get your lifestyle dialed in, which we got to talk things like sleep, um, and you actually get the result of losing the weight, like, man, everything else is going to be like firing better. You're going to feel better. Again, you sleep better. It's like this self fulfilling cycle. And
Yep.
so that to me is, again, what's exciting. And no one really starts with this, like, man, I just want to feel really good. It usually
Yeah.
is they come in, it's like, man, I'm sick of being overweight. Like, I know I'm better than this. I'm not doing what I need to be doing, but I don't really know where to start. Or I've tried a bunch of different stuff. And oftentimes this is taken very, unfortunately, I don't want to use the word gimmicky, but short-sighted approaches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you look online. There's all these like hey, lose 10 pounds in 7 days and whatever. But like
Right.
like yeah, you can do that. But like, what's the overall goal, right? And
Right.
I think one thing that I always try to do, just like as a planning process, is like to think about like long range, like 10 years, 15 years down the
Yep.
future. Like let's start there, and then you can start to develop action plans like to help get there. Like you're not going to get there right away, but like you're taking
Sure.
steps like towards the long term vision, and not just like I just want to lose this weight,
Yep.
then I'll be
And
happy.
and this is a challenge, again, with so not every guy I work with is an entrepreneur, but I do tend to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and many who are dads. So this is relevant to guys listening. Um, and really having to talk to them about like, hey, this isn't a marketing launch.
Hmm.
This isn't this short-term push of effort. This is the business plan. Like this is
Yeah.
the long-term foundational piece that you're going to have to walk through life with. And if you don't take that approach, it's like, yeah, you can crash diet down and lose some weight, and there's physiological ramifications of doing that. But more importantly, it's like you just aren't going to be able to maintain it with your schedule, right? Like again, busy dads, like you have three. It's like, oh, I'm going to work. Like I have an intake form, and I always ask, what's a realistic amount of time, or how many days could you realistically spend 45 minutes to an hour dedicated to specifically to exercise? And I
Hmm.
cannot tell you how many guys
7.
write 7.
Yeah.
And I go, cool, let's cut that in half at least, and maybe a little further, and start you with like 3. Because it's like, hey, how does that work for you in the last time that
Yeah.
you attempted to do this 7 day? I'm going to get up at 4 in the morning, crush it, and then I'm going to do a second workout at night. And it's like, that's a short-sighted approach. And if you can't do it a year from now, like what's the point? Because
Mhm.
realistically, if you want to maintain your results, this is something that you're going to be doing for a year from now. And I try to not future pace that too much, to say like, hey, this is your new rest of your life. But
Mhm.
realistically, like that's what we're talking about. If you want to have like true substantial change, like you're going to have to show up differently as a person in many different facets of your life. And it's going to have to be something that you can sustain. There can be small pushes within that framework, but like thinking that you're going to just do this one blast, you know, 20 days and get something big done, not going to happen.
Yeah. How long are guys typically like with you then, coaching wise? I mean, if it's a long term approach, like do you help them meet that milestone, like build a foundation and say like, hey, you're on your own, or do you
Yeah,
have?
so that is my goal. And
Okay.
I've had guys that work with me up to a year, but I would say about 6 months. But my goal when I work with guys is I do want to give you, like, I want to teach you to fish.
Mhm.
Like I want to give you the keys and understand how to like drive this vehicle that is yours. Um, and if it's fully reliant on me, this is where the personal training model I found when I was doing this years ago was very frustrating for me, because I didn't find as much success because there was way too much hand holding, and it was guys would come in and check the box that they got their workout done.
Yeah,
Saw
it's
their
like, you do
trainer,
this workout. That's it.
check
Yeah.
the box. Where it's like there is something to be said about you taking ownership of your physical body and actually being the one that's like, okay, I'm going to do this workout. And yeah, they have to send me videos, and I build out structured programs, and there's tons of accountability and support, and they got to log data, and they have tons of communication with me. But there's something to be said about like, I don't really want to do this workout today, but hey, I said I was gonna, it's on my schedule, stay in integrity to reach my goal. I'm going to step up and do it. There's growth there versus being the guy who just shows up and says, okay, I'm here. You take me through this workout. And I saw those guys tended to, when they would have success, when they would go on their own, they often would revert back, and I get an email months later, like, oh man, I put 20 back on. And it's like, wait, well, like, you got to continue. And so the online model, this was pre-COVID, I found actually to be a better medium to create real change, because it's putting a little bit more ownership in the guy's lap to say, I'm going to step up and do the physical hard labor without being babysat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so talk to me about like, what are some of the benefits, right? Like everybody knows, like, hey, I mean, you kind of just like conceptually know, like, I need to like get in better shape, right? Like if you see a picture of yourself at the beach and you're like, all right, I don't like that. And you kind of go after like the aesthetic view, but like after guys start putting in some work, they start to see some physical results too. But like, what else can they expect, like from outside of just physical?
Yeah, well, and obviously, like from the health component, like I mean, I shouldn't say all markers. Most markers of health, you're going to see improvements on just by getting a body composition improvement. Meaning, if you have high cholesterol, if you have high blood pressure, like those things are going to get better generally just by getting a reduction and getting into more normative body fat percentages. But again, the more intangible side, when all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm sleeping better. Like, dude, sex is better. Like, do you need more motivation than that, man? Like, right? When you have, again, I think when you're managing stress better, like, I hate to say it, like everything improves. Like this is the vehicle that's taking you through life. And if it is in a better state physically, like everything is easier. I mean, physical, like, oh, it doesn't hurt to go upstairs. It's like, yeah, no shit, it shouldn't. Like, when you're 40, you shouldn't feel 80. Like you should be pretty vibrant still at 40. And again, from a dad's side of the coin, it's like you get to be a spectator in your children's lives, or you get to be a participant. And that may sound judgmental, but like, I did a podcast on my episode with a friend who lost 100 pounds, and his big driver was his kid and being able to play with his kid. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, his son is going to have a very different relationship and outlook on his dad when he's actually able to like get out of the chair and like do the thing and like be involved and not be the armchair quarterback, but actually like get out and run the routes and throw the ball around. And to me, like being able to have and kind of step in and like squeeze more out of life is like the whole point of this.
Yeah. And I think as dads, like we know, right, that like we need to be involved, and we really need to be like showing our kids like how to live. And if you're sitting on the sidelines because you're out of shape, like what kind of impact is that going to have? Like not only if your kid, being like, oh, my dad couldn't play with me, but like, hey, my dad doesn't value health, right? So it must not be important, right? And so that's just going to have like a generational impact as well of like their mindset towards health and fitness.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's the old adage is like, your kids, they're not going to listen to you, they're going to watch what you do.
Yep.
And so for it's funny. So I feel like I need to throw this out there. This is I feel like I'm holding this secret back. I'm not a father, so I don't have kids.
What?
So yeah, so anything I'm sharing is what I've seen work with clients. And I won't come from my high horse as somebody who doesn't have kids in that, or isn't fully in that arena. I've just seen the impact that it's had on many dads. So I am speaking from
no, I think there's a lot of similarities though between being a dad, being an entrepreneur, business owner. And you kind of touched on them earlier. It's like, you're gonna be stressed for sure. You're not gonna have enough sleep, especially with small children.
That's a big challenge.
Sleep deprivation is a big challenge. I'm going through that right now. My 1 month old is getting up 2 times during the night, and so I'm probably getting like 4 or 5 hours on average, and it's just like, fuck me, man.
Yep.
You know, so, and same thing though, right? If you're a business owner, you're working through a big launch or you've got a big project and you're sacrificing sleep, like it's going to catch up with you too, you know? So I
Yep.
think the principles are the same.
Yeah, and again, it's at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Like, particularly like where you're at with a infant to probably even up to what 3-year-olds where like sleep disruption is going to be real. Like that's absolutely going to have massive create massive challenges even to just a weight loss goal if that's what
Hmm.
it is. Like there's some physiological things that happen. Ghrelin goes up, like you're going to be more hungry, right? Like your hunger hormones are raging. I think a study came out recently. These numbers are probably not going to be accurate, but um, I can't remember the amount of lack of sleep was correlated with like it was like 46% of the weight that was lost was actually lean muscle versus fat mass. This is going to be typical when you are losing weight. You tend to lose some muscle mass, but it was significantly higher in the men that were underslept. So it's like that's real. That's there's nothing like nothing you're going to do about that. But at the end of the day, the same truth kind of applies. The healthiest, best working version of you is going to be the one that's going to be best equipped to handle whatever that stressor is, whether that is a launch in your business or it is having 3 kids. Like you are going to be in a better position by taking some ownership of your nutrition, your exercise, bringing some of those things in. Like, man, that's going to make navigating that stress much easier.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into sleep a little bit. Cause like that, like just selfishly, that's my biggest challenge right now. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I know it's going to be different for everyone. Right.
Hmm.
You know, but ideally, like how much sleep should you be getting?
So, so here's, I think, something that's really important to recognize for dads who are listening to this. Again, if you're dealing with a 6-month old and it's your first kid versus like you on your third kid, like I don't know, man, maybe you have some tricks and tips and you have like you maybe you're better at falling back asleep now because you got 3 generations of trying this thing. Um, so it's going to look different. Other people who have 15-year-olds, like, man, welcome to high school drama and now your own stress, right? So um, I do think there are seasons of life where things are going to be much more difficult and much more challenging. Obviously, as a dad, this is going to be very true. Sleep, though, is going to be one of those big boulders that if you can try to work on it, it's going to pay positive dividends. So ideally, it's like, yeah, we get 8 hours of sleep. Well, like you said, you're up twice a night, right?
Yeah.
Right
It's just
now,
like not a possibility right now. Right. So,
zero.
yeah.
Right. So this isn't like, hey, oh, come on, man, like just punch that meeting back till noon, and once your baby's settled down, keep sleeping. Like that's not life. So you got to recognize where you're at, and like that is what it is, and that's going to be a temporary phase. But what I would try to do is at least do as much sleep hygiene as possible, to where we make the sleep we do get as productive as possible. And there's a
Yeah,
few
I think
things.
that's a big thing too. And like, I want to pick your brain a little bit on that because I'm not an expert on it for sure. You know, but because I've had challenges of one, like falling asleep, and then two, staying asleep, which I think everybody to some extent has those challenges. And like, what are some healthy tips and tricks to help relieve some of that? You know,
Yeah,
because you know, especially as a dad, right? Like you know, you're having to put your kids down and do bath time, you know, bedtime,
yeah,
all that stuff, right? And it's like a
yep,
3-hour routine from like, you know,
yeah,
all right, we got sports, then we got dinner, then we got bath time, then we got brush your teeth, then we got story time, you know, and then
yep,
like, and then you go to sleep, and like you get done with that, and you're just like, holy shit, I'm wiped, you know. But then
yeah,
it's not done, right? Now I need to go do the dishes, I need to take the trash out, I need to do, you know, blah blah blah, I got to take care of the dog,
yeah,
and so it's like you know, and then that can just continue until like 10 p.m. You're like, all right, fuck, let's shut it down. Let's go to sleep. And then you lay in bed and you're just like, I cannot turn my brain off. You know,
right.
so like, what are some things maybe that could help some guys out?
See, I joke and say I should have kids as somebody who like I would say almost struggles with insomnia. Like I do struggle with sleep. If I don't do these things,
Yeah.
I really do struggle. So again, that being hopefully a season, right? Like those things will change and sleep
Hmm.
time can hopefully improve. But like that's the season that you're in. It's real, right? Like that routine you just described. Heaven forbid, then you get your kid clean and he like has diarrhea in the bathtub, and it's like it adds on another hour. So some general things I think that are useful, and a lot of this I'm actually getting from Stanford neuroscience neurologist Andrew Huberman, who has a great
That
podcast.
funny you mentioned that. I just got turned on to his podcast.
He's great.
It's awesome, man. And I actually did a little Facebook Live yesterday in our little like binge group, which had a little plug. If you guys aren't part of the Epic Dad crew, you guys need to join. but yeah, I just mentioned some tips about breathing just to relieve stress and
Hmm.
stuff. But yeah, that's an awesome podcast, man. I've really been diving into it.
Yeah, he was. I had at one point I had him scheduled to come on my show, and
Oh, no
then
shit,
he
really?
went. And then he went on Rogan, and we
Yeah,
didn't hear any more
yeah.
from him.
That's a big head, I guess.
Yeah, right, well, no, I mean, understandably so. Um, so yeah, some of these tips are gleaned from him, and they've been useful for me as somebody who is a troubled sleeper and has been my entire life. I've always, growing up, I didn't realize till college it wasn't normal to lay down in bed, regardless of what time or how tired. That's like, yeah, you can lay there for what, an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? And then people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, I just kind of try to think of a movie or
Yeah, like
something.
that doesn't happen to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have a brother-in-law who literally can fall asleep on the floor, and it's like I don't think I've ever fallen asleep on my couch. So I do understand the challenge of sleep. So to me, when we think sleep hygiene, it's, hey, do you have like, is the room environment set? Like I have blackout curtains. It's a
Yeah.
must. So like getting blackout curtains for me, sound machine. That may not be realistic for a dad because perhaps you need to be a bit more attentive to if a baby is going to wake.
No, so
Um,
that's actually a perfect thing because I've been listening to a sound machine for like 6 years now because we have little video monitors in our kids' room and they have sound machines. So like,
oh, got it. Oh,
so
there you
you
go.
almost naturally get it.
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. So I think sound machines can be very useful. Um, and then obviously the big ones are going to be like being honest with your caffeine consumption. Again, underslept dad, you probably are going to pull that lever from the usability of a tool, but you need to be strategic with that. So like if you're pounding caffeine at 4 p.m., it's like, oh, you're setting yourself up negatively. But so leverage that caffeine in the morning when you need it. But like trying to get that done by probably noon is going to be your best bet. If you're a guy who
Okay.
it's like, hey, it's 4 o'clock and you're still bringing in coffee, like I get it, you're underslept, but like you're not setting yourself up for a good night of
Yeah.
sleep.
What's the length of stay of caffeine? It's like 4 hour half life or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I just know that like that's the easy one to like just start nudging that back.
Yeah.
Like again, like it will stimulate. Like that's a pretty easy one too because it's like get it in the morning when you really need it. Like I think a lot of like myself, it became habitual, right? In the
Mhm.
afternoon, I'm like, oh, I'm making another one. It's like my routine at that point. Um, and then something that I find this is from Huberman is morning sun gazing. And again, busy dad, how do you pull this off? Like, like I know some entrepreneurs have like ridiculously to the minute morning routines.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna happen, right? Like, oh, my breath work and
I know. It's so
my
funny that like
morning gratitude, like
yeah,
it ain't
because I'm
happening.
in like I read all this stuff, development stuff too,
Yeah,
and like
not a chance.
I would love to have like a 3 hour morning routine where I just
Yeah,
sit and meditate
not,
in the sun for like 30 minutes, and I'm like, there's
not,
no fucking way
not a
that's
chance.
happening. Like I got
Not
20
a
minutes,
chance.
bro. Yeah.
Yeah. So morning sun gaze, and the idea with this is basically, and like I did this before we hopped on the show. Um, it's basically getting natural sunlight in our eyes before 9 a.m. is going to help kick off melatonin release 16 hours later.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
this is only requires 2 to 10 minutes. It can even be done through a window. So is there some capacity before 9 that you're able to actually like ideally it's immediately upon waking, but we actually are getting the sun's rays coming into the coming into the top portion of our eyeball, which is literally going to stimulate and kind of set a clock to release melatonin, which is the restful hormone, 16 hours later. So does that mean like, hey, okay, like I'm dealing with my kid or whatever, but like, could I like whatever I'm doing, can I move it to like a sunlit window? And
Yeah.
again, really,
Okay.
really need 2 to 10 minutes. We can get it through the window. Ideally, if you could go outside, but that's one that I really try to do. And when I get in the routine of that, I think it's actually quite impactful.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't sound like that would be that difficult to do.
yeah,
Um,
and again, like do what you got to do. Like if you can pull it off, like if you can pull it off through your house, right? Again, you're not going to be the guy that's sit out on your deck and meditate for 3 hours, right? But if it's a 2 minute window that could set up a restful night, help set up a restful night of sleep, like oh man, that's a valuable 2 minutes to try to allocate.
okay. Like tactically, how does that work? Like sun gazing. You said you wanted to hit the top portion of your eyes.
So literally you're going to look at the sun. Obviously, like if it's like in a blinding sense, he doesn't suggest doing that. But yeah, you're literally just bringing in the sun's rays at that elevation is what it is. So
Okay.
we don't want to do this at, again, we wouldn't we wouldn't get the same benefit if we were doing this at noon when the sun's higher. So it needs to be before 9 o'clock. I think he even mentions you can use artificial light as well, meaning like if you wake up early, like get bright lights going.
Okay.
But yeah, man, if you have the opportunity, like obviously again, I'm a bit spoiled here in San Diego where it's easy to pop outside even in February. But if you need to, do it through the window.
Okay.
I've also leveraged from him specifically. There's 3 supplements, and I'm going to blank on all 3 of them that I have found to be helpful. Maybe we can put it in like show notes or something.
Yeah.
But it's Apigen, which is basically a derivative of chamomile, which is why people drink chamomile tea to relax. It's magnesium threonate, and I'm blanking on the third one. But I've tried things like valerian root, melatonin. Melatonin isn't recommended by again someone like this because there's I think some adrenal impact. But he does have 3 supplements, and I have found them to actually be very helpful. Find them on Amazon. Again, I can get you links to it. So that's been very useful for me.
Is that something you're just taking 30 minutes before bedtime or so, just to kind of like?
Yep, exactly. It's just pill form. One's a chewable, and 2 I just pop. And I found that to be useful. And then I think the one that I think dads probably would struggle with is, all right, you get your kids down, and again, you go through this whole thing, and you're like, man, I just want some me time, and trying to avoid all the bright light, phone in your face before you go to sleep. So again, coming back to Huberman, he recommends at night, if you do got to do some work, actually like kill the overhead lights, use lamps that are low to the floor to simulate the setting sun. Okay. Because again, we're getting basically you have a part of your brain exists on the end of your eyeball. It's like the only part of your brain that's outside your skull. And that's where these sun rays are hitting and literally activating parts of your brain. So like, that's a challenging one to like, all right, I finally wrapped my day, and I'm not going to sit here and spend an extra half hour on social media with the phone in my face. And is there a better way that you can like decompress? Maybe it's is it physically reading a physical book? Like that would probably be better than getting a bunch of bright light in your face. I think I know, and I've had clients where it's like, yeah, man, I get in bed and I want to get on my phone and like catch up on like social media and de-stress. And it's like, not ideal.
Yeah. I mean, just like personally, like I felt like when I've felt the best is when I've had like a routine, is like when I have structure. And even if it's just like really simple morning routine, simple like bedtime routine, like just having that routine and kind of like, and a big one for me is putting the phone away, especially at night. Right. Like one, from just like a blue light perspective, like that's going to keep you awake. But then 2 is like you're filling your brain with all this like negative stuff, like that's going to stress you out right before bed. So just at a certain period of time at night, just like, all right, I'm done for the day. Like let me switch and like start getting ready for bedtime.
Yep. And I even think, to your point of, you mentioned like you lay down and you have trouble turning your brain off. The thing with social media, whether it's like, Twitter, whatever you use, man, it's pretty cool. It's pretty easy if you spent 20 minutes outside of if you're just like photo flicking on Instagram. But if you're on Twitter, it's like you might have got exposed to, I don't know, 30 like legitimate, talking points that could consume your brain. Oh, Ukraine. Okay, what's going on? Boom. Well, now Finland and Sweden are joining NATO. Oh my gosh, nuclear wars happening. And Will Smith smacked Chris Rock, and like you could all of a sudden have like quite a few thoughts to really sit down and then try to like relax with. Like, versus, hey, just again, if you read a single book, like you're in one little story or whatever it is, versus, man, all of this data that just came in literally at the time where you're trying to de-stress and like relax, like the opposite of what we would want.
So talk to me about morning as well. Like you mentioned, try to get that natural sunlight before 9 is going to help really just set the pace for bedtime, right? It's going to help release that melatonin for bedtime. But like, and I'm guilty of this, especially now with like a newborn baby and stuff. Like I said, the best I've felt is when I have a morning routine, but like it can be very disruptive when you have a new baby, and you're not getting sleep, right? And like I know right now, like, hey, I need to start getting back into a morning routine, et cetera. But like that alarm goes off, and I'm just like, fuck it, man. Like 30 more minutes, right? Like talk to me about what are some ways that we can overcome that and like really get into that routine.
So I would, again, recognize the season of life that you're in And if it came down to like, hey, I have the opportunity to have 30 good more minutes of sleep, or I could get up and I could do my blank, 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 blank. I don't know. I might say, hey, in this season of your life, like hedge for the sleep. Like sleep super important. You know, is your again your gratitude journal with your fresh squeezed juice thing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think you have to make a decision of like, hey, what value does that morning routine really bring in? My girl, she actually does she gets up very early and she likes to get up and have an hour to like bring herself alive before she was working with clients. And I'm like, nope, I'm gonna hedge for sleep. So like I think you have to actually make the decision, like, is that morning routine like really valuable for you? Right? Like what is it gonna be? Because if it's like, hey, I now get up at 3:30 so I can hit the gym and I can do blank, 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 blank. And it's like, hey man, from a health standpoint, like those 2 hours and actually getting 6 hours of sleep versus 4, it's probably a better use of your time in this season of your life where sleep's, at a minimum.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's like hard, like part of the balance too for dads, especially young kids, is like that sacrifice in sleep, right? Because you're like, all right, you're like hard charger guys. You're like, hey, I want to still like get results, right? Like have kids, that's great, but like I still have
right.
goals, right? That I want
So,
to tackle, and then a lot of that like needs to be in the morning. At least I've found like the only time that I have during the day, if I do want to have a good nighttime routine and to go to sleep,
right,
is like I have to do it in the morning,
right,
but it's limited time in itself, right? Like, because then, hey, if I spend an hour at the gym, like that's an hour away from like what I could be working on in the business to drive the business too. So like I think
sure.
that's just the biggest challenge overall. I think for dads, it's just like effective use of time. And it was
Yep,
great that you mentioned like the seasons of life, right? And like what's more valuable? Like,
yep,
hey, is it more valuable to to get 6 hours of sleep, or are you going to trade that time for I'm going to get 4 and then head to the gym,
right.
but hey, without that sleep, you're not going to have an effective workout.
Right, and your recovery is going to be poor. So yeah,
Mm,
again, so to me, we answer this with like, hey, what is the most minimal effective dose that we can do across the
yeah,
board on most things? So on the nutrition side, like, um, to me, that's the very easy, actually solvable one because hey, you're going to eat either way,
yeah,
right? Like you're going to eat. This is not additive, right? This
mhm,
is just probably changing the direction. So for most of the business guys I work with, and again, this would correlate to dads too. It's like to me, you have no business driving to a gym. Like you need to have a home gym.
mhm,
You need to at least have access. And I get, oh no, I need to get out of the house, and I like to, I really do better when it's there. Cool, have that, but you better have access to at least the ability to put together a workout at the house
yeah,
because again, a 20-minute drive to a gym and a 20-minute return is 40 minutes that could have been your whole workout
yep,
done at home. Boom.
yeah,
So like again, and those routines need to be like minimal effective dose. Like what can you actually do with the time that you have allocated? So trying to do this perfect world thing that exists for somebody who doesn't have kids, like go talk to a 22-year-old fitness model and say, I'm going to do that. And it's like, no, you're not. Like that kid's living in a college dorm, has zero responsibility,
yeah,
works out, 16 times a week. Like that's not you.
yeah,
So I think one of the best tools is ultimately like, can you put together some base level of a home gym, which could be as simple as, hey, some adjustable dumbbells, maybe a TRX, maybe you start to piece equipment together. But like that right there is such an easy time saver for guys. To where like, man, go into it like, and I always share this, your results are still going to be great. Personally, like I haven't been to a gym in like 5 years. I have my deck and I have probably more equipment than the average person would. Um, I take that back for the last 4 months when COVID happened and there was about a 4 month period. I went and got a gym membership when COVID was happening. And it was like, I was really cooped up here. But like, you do not have to go to a gym to have a great workout. And again, from a time efficiency standpoint,
yeah,
like, oh, you absolutely should just have access or at least the ability when needed, when again, something does happen with, one of the kids and it's like, man, I can't make it to the gym today. Okay, cool. Well, you got your home gym, bang it out.
yeah. I think so. A couple points on that. One, and I'll counter on one thing, and probably like just where I struggle. Like, one, like I think it's great to have a home gym because if especially like and not to like bad talk the CrossFit world or anything because I still do a lot of that stuff, but like what I challenge with is like that for instance is like, hey, let's say I plan on going to the 5:30 a.m. class, right? Because like that's the only fucking time I can do it during the day,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, hey, my kid was up, 4 hours screaming, and I changed 6 diapers, whatever. That alarm goes off at 4:45, and I'm like, fuck this, man. And then I hit the snooze to get a little bit more sleep, because I feel that's more valuable. Then now I'm like, well, shit, I missed it, because like they have a noon
Right.
class, they have a 4 p.m. class, 5 p.m. class. Like I can't fucking do any of those. And so like
Right.
the day's gone, right? So I totally agree with the home gym and like having that. But where I'll push back a little bit, and maybe you can just help me and some other guys with some advice, is one of the things I like about going to the gym is it switches the mechanism, right? It's a
Sure.
shift in my brain, right? So like, I feel like if you have a home gym, there has to be some type of ritual to where you're changing your mindset from like, I'm not at home, I'm at the gym. That's where I struggle a little bit,
Yeah, and obviously, like, let's be real, the environment of a CrossFit gym is going to be very different than, pulling off a home gym on your own. Like, let's be real, the energy is going to be different. So again, this just comes down to utility at this point. Like, is there value in that workout? You can create a new challenge for yourself. Like, this is a big one. I talk with guys where it's like a mindset that I encourage guys to take on, and that one that I use, where it's like, let's get good at doing the stuff that is hard that we don't want to do.
Mhm.
Like, there's massive utility in this. And I would imagine as a dad, like, there's all sorts of stuff that you're going to be doing. And so, being able to, like, okay, cool, I'm going to go show and prove to myself that I can put myself through a good workout on my own without having, some
Mhm.
big crazy gym, squad yelling and cheering on. Like, can I go
Mhm.
push myself? This is an opportunity to actually develop that skill.
Mhm.
Fantastic, because that's a great skill that we're going to need. So, I think it really does just come down to the mindset side. I will say, that idea of like, oh fuck, I missed it, it's all over. Well, okay. This is where setting like minimum standards through the week. So like, hey, I have a target of 3 workouts this week planned, and it's like, shit hit the fan on Monday. I missed this one. All right, well, you're able to bump it down, and you
Yeah,
still
but I'm
have.
okay, right? Yeah. Mhm.
I'm still good. And then, sorry about that. And then if you get to the end of the week, now you get to have that tough love session where you're like, hey, I got to hit my standard I said I would. And like, today's going to be, now I maybe struggle on the
Yeah, like
sleep a little
shit. I
bit.
don't have you sleep, but I said
Like,
I was
said
gonna
I
do
would do it.
3. So yeah.
Right. So I got to hit this minimum standard. I'm very big on the idea of minimum standards because we can always do more. But so many guys, again, like, I'm going to I'm going to hit CrossFit at 5:30 4 days this week. Baby got sick. you know, Next day, mom caught it. She needs extra help. And it's like, or you could say that's the goal, but the minimum standard is I hit 3 home workouts this week.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool.
No,
Hold the
I love
standard.
that idea. Minimum standards. I guess that's something I've never done before. I'm probably more I err on the side of like, hey, I'm gonna go all out, and like put
Dude,
myself out,
that's the biggest thing I always hear. Like, I'm all in or I'm all out. I hear this
yeah,
from every
yeah. But it's not
person I work with.
sustainable though. It's not. It's definitely not sustainable.
No, what my answer, my rebuttal, I go, no, you're not. You're not an all in or all out guy because you can't stay all in.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, be 100% in 80% of the time, right? Like, so
60% of the time, it works every time.
yeah. And so, again, like, getting in your head that, like, okay, I gotta like hit this class versus a home gym. That's just getting in your own head to where it's like, cool, now I have a, a place of practice to where I can show and prove to myself that, like, hey, I can self-motivate through a hard workout. Like, there's
Hmm.
great utility in doing that. And now you actually have some way to practice that skill. So
Hmm.
like, not being able to go to that CrossFit class, fantastic. Because now I have an opportunity to practice a new skill of
Yeah.
self-motivation.
Yeah.
Love it. Because it's going to happen. There's going to be days where, like, you're just not going to be able to make that class. And far too many guys are going to let one action lead to the other, like,
Hmm.
constantly, right? Like, one poor meal choice, one missed workout, and like this cascade of events happens. And it's like, it's one workout. That's all that happened. Nothing else.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then again, if we have minimum standards and we can still hit them, you're good to go.
Yeah, no, I love that concept. That's something I'm gonna start implementing like immediately. Minimum standards of just like, I mean, with everything too, right? One thing for fitness, but it could be, with everything meal wise too. I'm just thinking like nutritionally as well.
Oh, totally. And real quick on this minimum standard idea. This is what I mean by this. Like, so again, intake form with me. How many days can you work out realistically? I hear 7. I instantly go, again, we go through the conversation. How did that work out last time? If it's 2 as the minimum standard, it's 2. And when I say minimum standard, I mean nothing can pop up that would stop you from doing
Yeah,
these.
like this is you have to do this.
Right. So if you're like, oh, I could do 3, and it's like, yeah, but you know what? My 1-year-old uh actually throws up and like it's crazy. Like it's 2 then. Cool, you get 3, great, but you don't get extra credit.
Mhm.
Like you hit your standard. And scale that back. It could be you could do this across the board. So I do this with multitude of habits that I'm trying to work on. It could be mobility, it could be like some memory stuff I'm working on or whatever. And I'm going to set what those minimums are. And it's like you need to actually have some visual of that. So like for me, it's like it might be a sheet on my door, and it's like, hey, I want to get back to jujitsu after having a torn knee. It's like you got to do your mobility work. I'm walking into the bedroom. There's my sheet that says 5 times a week, and I'm looking at 4. And it's like, boom, to the living room to even in that instant do the minimum standard.
Mhm.
Like, oh God, I don't have to go do a 30-minute mobility routine right before I go to bed. I'm going to go foam roll my quads. And I just get on the foam roller. And then I think, I'm already here. I might maybe do a couch stretch and open up another hip flexor.
Yeah.
And whatever, even in that instant, is going to be the minimum standard to check the box for that day. And like that level of like, quote, limping yourself along when you're in these tougher seasons of life, like, dude, that's what stops you from putting on 20 pounds and allows you to
Mhm.
like get through it.
Yeah. I love what you said too about having a visual, like a reminder. I think like one thing that, and I'm definitely guilty of this as well, of being like, all right, I set my minimum standard, right? It's 3. And
Yeah.
then, and then I'll
How
be
many
like,
did I do?
yeah, and then I'll be like, all right, I've done 2.
Yep.
I think I'm okay. I'll be fine this week, whatever, like kind of talking yourself out of it. Right. But then, hey, if you have that visual and like you look at it and you're like, motherfucker, like I
Yeah,
said
dude,
3, like
a simple
I've done two,
checkbox.
two tallies. There's 3's not up there.
Yep. And again, something that you actually can see, because it could be as simple as this, where it's like, all right, again, you pass by it in the day and you're like, oh my God, it's Friday and Saturday, we're going on vacation, Sunday, like that's gone. I'm like, I gotta get a workout in today. Okay, again, we have the visual, we're aware of it. And now I'm gonna do the minimum standard because that's what I got today.
Mhm.
So you're gonna hit split squats with overhead presses and you're gonna call it a workout. Maybe it wasn't your best workout, right? Because maybe you had to give that even within the workout, it became a minimum standard.
Yeah.
But it's like that's what that week required. But like you're going to be a summation of your habits over the long haul. And if you did that for 3 months, like you could drive some results versus the guy who it's like, well, I can't do it at all, so done.
Yeah.
And again, that all or nothing. We got to kill
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely habits, is what's going to drive success, like daily habits. Like we can set all these like crazy aggressive goals and, but at the end of the day, it's like, what are you doing every single day that's going to drive towards that success? Like, I, like knowing that that's so important. How do you help guys to make sure those habits are top of mind? Like you mentioned, like a little visual or something like that. But do you have any other kind of tips and tricks?
Well, so obviously when I'm working with them, like this is all done in app and they obviously have access to me. So there's I'm holding I'm holding a lot of accountability in that space. But
Yeah.
uh, if you're doing it solo, it really is like Sunday night, and this is again stuff clients need to do. It's like, okay, let's look at the week ahead. Realistically, again, we have our minimum standard. Hey, maybe we have a week now where it's like, hey, whatever the situation where like things are, baby's sleeping more. Oh, baby, like, man, she turned a corner. It's been great. She sleeps through the night now. Right. Like I know that like magically happens with kids all of a sudden. Right. Or all, again, you talk about ebbs and flows and seasons of life to where, okay, now I have a little bit more bandwidth and I can ramp it up and like get 5 in if you can. Great. But like you have to just set the standard Sunday night. Look at your week. What do you really have the ability to do? And again, be honest with yourself. Don't say 7. And like adjust that week to week. Right? Like too many guys are again like, I'm gonna do a 5-day workout plan. Fantastic thought, fantastic goal. Is it reasonable in the long in the medium term, even let's call it? You could break it down week to week, and there may be a week where it's like, okay, 5 I know is out of the question. It's not gonna happen this week. Again, with some of the guys I've worked with where it's like, I've had a client, it's like, great, 7 years of working on his business is coming down to the FDA approving something. And it's like, yeah, man, you're not like, what? You think 5 workouts? Not a chance. So it's like, set the minimum standard week to week. It can change. And there's something psychological that happens with this too. That's, I think, super important is, like, if I were to, invite you out to dinner and I no show you, you might give me a pass once. If I do it a second time, you're gonna be like, man, fuck that Luke guy. He's unreliable.
Mm.
The same thing is happening when we are setting a goal for ourselves and then we fail to hit it. And all of a sudden, now the unreliable person is ourself. And
Yeah.
subconsciously, I think this creates a whole host of problems. And I've seen this numerous times where guys really don't have the belief that they can make these changes. And this is where it's like, hey, let's set that standard that, like, we're gonna hit it because we can always increase it. But
Mhm.
like, minimum standard, week to week, what's it actually gonna look like? And adjust on the fly. Like, get
Yeah.
off the idea that it's like, I work out 5 days a week at 5:30 in the morning and I do CrossFit. It's like bullshit.
Yeah.
You have 3 kids and an infant. Not happening. Like, good target. Let's scale it down each week and say, hey, I'm gonna hit 2 CrossFit workouts and at a minimum 1 home workout.
Mhm.
Or flip it. I'm gonna hit minimum 2 home workouts, but ideally I'm gonna get 2 CrossFit workouts. Great. But we only judge on the minimum standard.
I
Get
think
more? Love it.
one thing that is interesting too, and like I'll dive a little bit deep, is you were talking about like, hey, if you consistently don't hit the goal, it's going to drive like certain behavioral changes, like conceptual changes, and like confidence issues,
Oh, huge.
with you, to where like you don't trust yourself, right?
Yep.
That hey, I'm the type of person that can go after these goals and accomplish them. And I think something that was really cool to hear. I actually heard it on Huberman's podcast, the one around goal setting. I'm not sure if you've listened to it yet or not.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm
But
curious.
it was very, very interesting. And one of the tools that like everyone hears about, like, effective goal planning is visualization, and like, always have the end in mind, right? What's the big goal you're going for? And like, I think that's good, or Huberman says, scientifically, like that's good for a certain level of motivation at the beginning of your goal, right? So like if you're
Mhm.
like, if someone's in your program and they say, hey, I want to lose 25 pounds, right? Like that's the end goal,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And they do a visualization on that, like what's going to look like when I'm there, et cetera. And that gets them like
Mhm.
super amped up to take action, like to
Yeah.
start the work. But then that dissipates over time,
Absolutely.
that visualization. And so he was saying a much more effective method, which is kind of counterintuitive, is to visualize what life is going to look like if you don't meet this goal, and visualize failure, which was very crazy for me to think about.
Yeah.
But I've started to do that, and I actually, you can't see like my vision board and goal board, but I have it right here. And I've got for my business, I've got the what is the target revenue that I want to be by a certain period of time, and like what is the strategy that I'm working on, right? And
Right.
then, but down at the bottom, it just says what will life look like if I don't get there?
Yeah.
And like that's the question I'm asking of like, all right, like the big lofty goal, the big revenue target helps me start taking action, but then thinking about like what's it gonna look like if I don't get this keeps me in action.
Yeah. This is the
Which is
pain
very,
and pleasure,
yeah,
right?
exactly. He was talking about
Yeah.
like all goal setting involves the amygdala, which I'm definitely not an expert at this. But amygdala is like the pleasure and pain like processor, right?
Yeah.
That just
Fear
helps you
center.
like drive action. And humans
Mhm.
are much better at going away from pain than towards
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yep. So, love that. And actually, this resonates. So, and I'm ripping this from Tom Bilyeu, but this is something that I use to where, and I was literally having this conversation, yesterday with a client, to where, again, like, 100% right. The like getting somebody excited about this potential future, like, like, you have to have that to like get started, because again, if
Mhm.
like you don't want to get there, like, you're not gonna, again, oh, my doctor told me I need to lose some weight, doesn't mean shit. You're not gonna start. Like, we're not gonna, like, I wouldn't, can't work with you, you're not ready.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta want it. But like, wanting this future thing that's gonna take a while to get won't pull you through.
Mhm.
Again, great starter. But what you can leverage, and this is again like the pain side, it's like you can use the dark tactically, and you don't want to use the dark side on the long term. It's not something that you want to like pontificate daily,
Yeah.
but you can use it in like certain instances. So again, like when that alarm goes off and it's like, I got to do this workout to hit a standard, but I don't feel like doing it. Now you can kind of turn on the dark and be like, what kind of guy am I if I don't do
Yeah.
what I said I was going to do?
Hmm.
And like that negative, like again, self-talk, like we don't want that chronically ever, right? But like in those little moments to light the fire, to get your ass up, like I think that's a super useful thing as long as you can not live there.
Hmm.
And one that I actually throw out, this is when I do work with dads that I'll often ask, and it's like, and I'm somewhat being truthful, it's like, hey man, it's a very simple question. It's like, who's going to walk your daughter down the aisle, you or another man? Because your lifestyle is leading you in a direction that one outcome is not a guarantee
Hmm.
that you're going to be there for her. And like that, again, in the morning when you're like, should I do it? If you actually could enroll yourself in the belief that like, if I don't do this workout today, some other dude is walking my daughter down the aisle on her wedding day, like that is a hard fuck no, that's not happening. And you're going to go.
Yeah.
And so like, I love it. You just got to be able to tactically use the pain,
Yeah.
not live there. That's can't live in the negative though.
The other thing I think that helps like drive motivation and action, and like when that alarm goes off and you're like, fuck, I don't want to get up, but then you do it anyway. Is there's this guy, Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you know of Alex or not. But
Yep.
great sales guy, like great entrepreneur.
Gym guy
But
actually.
yep, yeah, Gym Launch, I think was his thing. But he mentioned this thing that really by like asking yourself the question, like, what would somebody who already has the result that I want, what would they do in this situation? Right. So,
Yep.
if you really want to like get in shape and like, around nutrition and kind of have that lifestyle, you might have like somebody that you look up to and aspire to. And it may not even be an individual, but just like somebody that embodies that, of just like,
Yeah.
what decision would they make at this point? Like, are they hitting the snooze
Yeah.
button on their alarm? Like, no, like
Yeah.
they're getting up, they're taking the action, and like that's who I want to be. So like that's the action I need to take.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is the whole idea of like stepping into it, right? And like, or become being, living in a way of being, and what's the one book like Alter Ego, where it's like, okay, what version of me would do this? And
Hmm.
like, you have to become that version because current version isn't getting it done.
Yeah.
So yeah, like who that guy, what would he do? And I think we're all trying to create that again, greater version of ourselves, right? In multitude of capacities. And it comes down to those actions. So I love that. Yeah. What would that guy that I want to be do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Well, Luke, man, I want to give people an opportunity to come like find you, like find your program, and I'll link to everything in the description
Sure.
for this. But for folks that aren't like ready to take the next step of wanting to enroll in like a paid program, which I think can be extremely beneficial. But if maybe they're not there financially, maybe they're not there, for some whatever reason, but they still have that desire to get in better shape, to eat better, to really have a better lifestyle. Like what are just a couple of tactical tips that you could give for
Sure.
someone just to get started?
So probably one of the most undervalued things would just be walking. So when in my coaching, like one of the things that we're a KPI is gonna be what is our step count in a day,
Mm.
and take inventory on that. If you find out like, wow, man, I'm pretty sedentary, I only do like 1,500 steps, like man, you have a really low hanging fruit to
Hmm.
capitalize on, and it's like getting that up to 10,000, 15,000, even if you're a desk jockey, which may mean, hey, I have a stand up desk. Every time I have a sales call, I pace around in my house
Hmm.
or in the office. And like people are looking at me. I mean, truthfully, I've had clients where it's like, I've recommended there's a treadmill that is literally a cube so it can fit under your desk. And the difference of like you getting 8,000 steps is the difference, or getting your step count up to like 10 and 12,000 steps. It's like difference of like 650 calories that you would have in a day to either like indulge with, or obviously if we had a weight loss goal, that's going to have some impact. So don't undervalue low level movement. I think it's something across the board we are all lacking.
Hmm.
If we are specifically talking a weight loss goal, understand that exercise, when we're talking all this time management stuff, it's going to be not the biggest pillar. It's going to be the nutrition side.
Yep.
And weight loss is truly driven by calorie deficit, period, regardless of the diet that you choose to do. So something that I think is very useful would be to begin to try to regiment and structure your nutrition. This doesn't mean you have to eat the same boring thing every day, but instead, what we could do is eat many of the same things that we really enjoy most days, because now you're going to have a little bit of structure where you can start to push and pull calories as needed. Meaning, in my coaching, this is all go-to meals. So, like, hey, you have a few go-to breakfasts, and now you have a place of structure where, like, hey, if the scale's not moving, I can maybe nudge some calories. Okay, I'm having an omelet every morning with 3 pieces of toast and butter and jelly. Boom, we knock out some jelly, cut a couple pieces of toast, we pump up some egg whites and maybe a little bit more veg, and all of a sudden it feels about the same. Calories came down, and now the scale's moving without feeling like you're doing this radical crazy thing. So until you get a little bit more structured and systematic in what you're eating, it's hard to just push and pull calories.
Mhm.
So again, I don't suggest eating the same exact boring thing that you hate. This should be something that you enjoy. Those would be the two biggest places to start. Get step count up in the least obtrusive way, right? Doesn't mean get up, don't set the alarm 30 minutes earlier to go hit the treadmill. Like, how can you during your day bring that step count up? That is a low-hanging fruit for a lot of people, because a lot
Yeah.
of us are
What's a
sitting at a desk
good
working.
what's a good minimum standard on step count? I mean, it's going to vary
So,
for people, but your clients, what do you give them kind of on average?
well, I'm trying to get people up to about 10,000, but again, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit more. So we are using a little more like I have one guy where it's like, hey, just hold right now at 5. Like, you're
Yeah.
like, just hold there, because we want to save that leverage later
Mhm.
for as we drive deeper into a fat loss phase. And I'm getting into the weeds on some stuff. But in general, it's like, man, 8, 10 to 12,000 steps a day. Like, if you can try to pull that off, like, it's going to require you to get tactical if you have a desk job. But
Yeah.
that, particularly if you have a weight loss goal, like, that is some low hanging fruit. I mean, it's not even crazy to say, like, man, I just walked 20,000 steps and I barely feel like I changed my diet, but I lost weight. And it's like, yeah, you probably would. Resistance training is going to have some benefits, obviously, from like muscle retention during that fat loss phase, but like, that's a different conversation. So if we're talking what's like some of the quick, easy stuff, again, step count, regiment your nutrition a bit, so you at least have it systematized. So now you can know where you can move things out of. And like, to get super specific on that, to give an example of what I mean, again, I kind of talked about the omelet, but let's just say in the morning, you wake up, boom, dealing with the kids, straight to the coffee, you grab the creamer, you shake it up, pour it in, and now you're getting your day going. Taking inventory on that coffee, and instead of doing a direct pour with creamer, do it one day, but do the creamer first. There's no coffee in the mug first. Creamer, just, you're on autopilot, pour it in there. Now take that creamer and go measure out and be like, oh, wow, I'm having 380 calories of creamer. Okay. Doesn't mean cut cream or cut coffee. Like, now you actually have a place of structure where you could say, I now use a tablespoon measurement. I keep it by the coffee maker. Boom, 2 tablespoons. And now you just knocked out 240 calories, let's say, or 200 calories. If you
Mhm.
find like 3 or 4 places in your life that you've done that, like, that could get the ball rolling on weight loss,
Yeah.
where all of a sudden you remove 600 calories a day, but it didn't feel like you did anything.
Yeah. So I didn't
Like,
change
that's
much. Yeah.
right. So another one with dads that I do recommend, this is kind of, again, getting into like the ways of being. Um, Literally, I was having a conversation with another guy yesterday about this. So creating a hard line where you're like, yeah, I don't eat my kids' food. Like, I don't eat the leftovers. Where you're like, oh, it feels wasteful, and like, I just threw that out. And it's like, okay, so maybe you lost like $1,500 worth of like leftover food, but that you saved yourself 15 pounds, right? So, it's pretty easy when you're cleaning up and like, oh, kid didn't eat it, and you throw it in. And it's like, well, how many extra calories are you mindlessly eating cleaning up after your kid? And it's like, you can make a hard line where, like, yeah, I don't eat my kids' leftovers. And like, that type of little just like habit shift. All of a sudden, you put a couple of those things together. You didn't do anything radical life transformation, but all of a sudden the scale is moving because, yeah, you've effectively created a calorie deficit.
Yeah. And on the caloric deficit, is there anything that you recommend to track calories? Like any technology, or you do it like old school paper wise?
So I use 3 systems with clients. We use MyFitnessPal, I use photo food journaling, or I use what's called an adherence chart, which you have to be pretty structured in your nutrition to use that. It's basically we're using like hand portions of protein, fists of vegetables, palms of carbs, and thumbs of fat. So you have to have a pretty structured system to be able to just say yes or no. It fit that structure. So I would say for dads, I don't think MyFitnessPal is probably the way to go because it's going to be fairly involved. But you could absolutely like photo food journal for a few weeks. And it's like take actual inventory of what you're eating, because most guys, most people don't really have a clear understanding of how much or what they're eating. So something as simple as like just take a photo of everything you eat and then take a look at it at the end of the week, and you can kind of get an idea of like, all right, here's the intake. Where can I make some adjustments from? Because if you don't really know what you're eating, it's really hard to start making some adjustments because everybody says I'm eating pretty good, and but I'm not seeing the result.
Yeah, I think who was it that said it? Some business guy. I forget his freaking name now. But what is it? What doesn't get measured doesn't get action or some shit like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
but
that's it.
Yeah, you
and like and the act of doing some food journaling, however you do it, for a lot of people, it will actually create action. Which oftentimes with clients, I don't want them to do this. I'm like, hey, let me see what you're really already eating. Don't change anything. But just knowing that they have to take a photo or having some accountability, having somebody look at it, all of a sudden they start curbing their behavior because you're like, yeah, I don't really want to take and show this picture that I'm having a pint of Ben and Jerry's
Tuesday
so I'm
not gonna eat it.
So I won't eat it. And but the value, and again, understanding what you're eating is, hey, if you are the guy that's like having Ben and Jerry's on Tuesday night because that's part of your de-stressing routine, all right, well, guess what? Now that we know that, what if we shift over to enlightened ice cream, which it's not as good, but it's still ice cream. Boom, 840 calories gone, because it's a 350 calorie pint of ice cream versus a 1200 calorie. And it's like, if you don't know what you're eating, you can adjust from there. So take a little bit of time and just audit what you're actually eating.
Okay. No, really, really good tactical tips, Luke. And I know we're coming up close to time, man. So I like I said, I will put links in the description of this podcast for everything from Luke, where you can find him on social. Any of his programs that he has, coaching that he has, his social security number, his credit card, all posted in the description. But no, Luke, like, thank you, man, for coming on. I think this has been extremely valuable, like for our audience for sure, but valuable for me too. Just with the phase of life that I'm in, having to make some changes, make some adjustments. And one thing I'm going to take away for sure is the minimum standards. I really like that idea. So start implementing that way. So thank you again for coming on, man. And we will see you guys in the next episode.